Okay, welcome back to Mining Now. I'm your host, Jared Downey. Today we're talking gold mining and assay chemicals technology. It's going to be a lot we cover in this episode, so stick with us. We're going to have Nathan Edwards. He's the business manager at Mineral Process Control. They're a Western Australian company that is servicing all over the world for the assay chemicals and technologies. Lots to cover. Before we get into it with Nathan, let's just a quick reminder. We are going to be, this is a fitting one to promote, we're going to be at IMARC November 2nd to 4th. We already have episodes booked for that. If you're going to be attending and you want your company featured, you can let us know. We have a great mobile setup and we'll do an interview right from the trade show floor for you. What other announcements? Oh, we still have our subscriber contest going. We're giving away the drill set, and we've seen a lot of big jump in subscribers right now. It'll be a Makita drill set. All you have to do is hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. We see your name, and then you go into the draw. That is it for announcements. Let's jump into it with Nathan. Nathan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jared. Good to be here.
Yeah, I've just kind of recently started to get to know Mineral Process Control. So, can you maybe just give us that bird's eye view of who the company is, and then we'll jump into it.
Yeah, I will do. Mineral Process Control, we've been around for almost 30 years, started in 1995 by our managing director, Rob Mason, who's a geologist who had many, many years running mine sites, etc. Initially, the company was started to promote a product called LeachWELL, which I think many of your viewers are probably familiar with. Now, LeachWELL is an accelerant for the cyanide dissolution process for gold. And what it allowed customers to do was to basically accelerate a 24-hour assay, bottle roll assay from 24 hours, which normally takes down to 1 hour. So you can see the benefit of doing that in terms of an assay process. From that, we then developed an Assay Tap, which used the cyanide and LeachWELL in one small tablet, which allowed the assay to place that within the bottle roll quite safely in the measured amount. And from that, we then developed our signature, our main product, which is the pulverise and leach assaying process, which is we call PAL 1000. Which is what we're pushing out into market, and has been quite successful lately.
Can you sort of just, I mean, probably there's going to be a certain percent of viewers, like you mentioned, that understand the process, but for a lot of people, they'll just want to need to get to the core of it. So could you sort of explain the process, and I'm sure you'll send us some images and that we can bring up some charts of a little more in depth of what we're talking about and that original process that got the company started?
In terms of the LeachWELL products?
Yes.
So that was developed by a gent who's a late gentleman called David Menne, who was a bit of a pioneer in the gold cyanidation process, whereby, as your viewers may not know, that gold cyanide is used extensively in the gold mining industry to leach gold up into solution, and that can then be recovered through generally a CIP process through using carbon. You will then, for that process, for the gold coming into the plant, you'll need to understand the gold content, and generally you use that by a traditional process such as fire assay or something like that. That particular fire assay analysis doesn't give you your recoverable gold. So you might have X grams per tonne of gold coming into the plant. However, you will only recover a percentage of that, so 90, 95+%. What the cyanidation assay is, which traditionally uses what's called a bottle roll, where you get a large jar and put a large amount of ore into the bottle, plus cyanide, and water, and you roll it around to dissolve the cyanide up, and it gives you the recoverable amount of gold, so how much your plant will be able to recover. What LeachWELL allows you to do is that normally would take 24 hours to get a complete dissolution. LeachWELL is a chemical that accelerates that process and allows you to do that within 1 hour. So rather than having 24 hours to determine your recoverable gold, it only takes you 1 hour. So you can see the obvious benefits for the miner or the assayer in that regard in terms of time benefits. That was the initial process. And in the mid to late 90s, that was what the company pushed out into market. And you'll see that in a lot of explorers, for example, on their notes to stock exchanges like the top Toronto Stock Exchange, the Australian Stock Exchange, through their announcements, they'll have a LeachWELL, what they call a LeachWELL assay.
Right.
So they'll have the gold content and the LeachWELL assay, which is primarily the recoverable gold assay. So from that LeachWELL chemical, the company then started to develop all these other technologies and chemicals to assist the assayer and really push forward that accelerated assay, cyanidation assay.
Alrighty, so let's take a moment to thank our sponsors. And first up, we have Petro-Canada Lubricants. HF Sinclair, which includes the Petro-Canada Lubricants brand, is a proud sponsor of Mining Now. Petro-Canada Lubricants products and services are proven to maximize equipment performance, productivity, and overall savings. From heavy-duty engine oils to hydraulic fluids, ATFs, gear oils, and greases, Petro-Canada Lubricants is committed to delivering innovative solutions that deliver value and keep businesses moving. They have dedicated technical expertise, knowledge, and know-how to help customers in the mining industry operate smoothly with improved equipment, reliability, and performance. Learn more at lubricants.petro-canada.com or contact them at 1-866-335-3369 to arrange a call with one of their technical experts. Next up, we have Savona Equipment. Savona Equipment supplies new and used mining equipment around the world, from placer to underground to ore processing plants. They have gold concentrating tables, trommels, and mineral jigs in stock now to take advantage of the high gold prices. You can visit them at savonaequipment.com, where you will find more equipment every day. We also have Micromine. As your mining projects accelerate, so should your technology. Micromine is a leading software provider to the global mining industry with solutions that support the entire life cycle from early exploration to advanced mine operation. Micromine enables explorers to prospect smarter, model faster, and estimate with greater confidence. They empower mining engineers to optimize strategic mine planning, streamline design, and schedule faster. Micromine's technology supports even the largest mines to gain greater operational control and boost performance. And they provide mining teams with reliable data management solutions to enhance insights, meet compliance, and safeguard digital assets. To learn how Micromine's next generation technology can help you, visit their website at micromine.com today. We also have General Kinematics. Revolutionize the way you think about screening with General Kinematics STM Screen 2-mass vibratory screen. Using General Kinematics proven 2-mass technology, this innovative screen is capable of handling increased capacities by up to 40%. With 2-mass natural frequency, load surges are no longer a problem. The load responsive design increases retention time, working the material longer, which increases screen efficiency. All these features combine to provide the most efficient, longest lasting, and lowest cost of ownership screen in the industry. General Kinematics STM Screen, screen smarter. You can visit them at generalkinematics.com to learn more. We also have, of course, CIM. The 2022 edition of the Maintenance, Engineering, and Reliability Mine Operators Conference, or MEMO, is coming to Sudbury at Science North from September 18th to the 21st for a full in-person event. Join industry peers for 2 days of technical and keynote presentations where you will have the opportunity to learn about how many of the ways the mining industry is leveraging technology to adapt to a new world. Networking events will offer a chance to build relationships with other mining professionals. The event also includes a trade show featuring some of the industry's most dynamic companies that is not to be missed. You can register at memo2022.cim.org. Now, let's get back to the interview.
I realize asking this question, you might completely correct me and I might be way off, but I'm going to give it a try. So is the PEL, is the system that you were just going through, the LeachWELL system. Now, is the PEL 1000? Is it the machine that operates that system? Are they connected?
Yeah, it's a good question. So basically, the PEL was developed from the LeachWELL chemical, and then a subsequent product we produce, which is an Assay Tap, which is effectively a combination of LeachWELL and cyanide in a small tablet, which we can then add into a bottle roll, and a lot of customers do that. What the PEL 1000 was developed with the premise of if you could assay your ore samples or your process samples quite quickly using the LeachWELL and cyanide combination, then you could potentially get a recoverable assay, cyanide recoverable assay very quickly. So rather than using bottle rolls, the premise of the PAL is effectively 52 cast iron pots, which are containers, which contain grinding media, and that's the pulverizing aspect of it. We then add the Assay Tap, which has got the LeachWELL and cyanide, and a kilogram of ore sample, hence the 1,000. And that effectively grinds and leaches the ore sample to recover the total recoverable gold within an hour. So effectively what we're doing is combining LeachWELL and cyanide within a tablet, which then goes into the PAL machine. And the beauty of it is if you're going down the fire assay route, for example, or other equivalent assay routes, you will need to do a certain amount of you'll need to do a certain amount of assay preparation. So where you'll get the sample from, say, the drill, the air drill, whatever you're using, the RC drill, and it'll be quite coarse. You'll then need to split that sample down because it may be, say, a number of kilograms into a small amount, and then pulverize that sample into micron size, which then goes into, say, for example, a fire assay might be 30 grams of sample. So you might be going from 2 or 3 kilos down to 30 grams. So there's a fair amount of process to get down to that small amount. With the PAL, the beauty of that is you can split, say, a 2 kilo sample from a RC drill down into a 1 kilo subsample, which you can then crush down to 2 mil normally, a minus 2 millimeter size, which is still quite coarse, and put that sample straight into the PAL machine. And then an hour later, it's pulverizing and leaching at the same time and allows you to then assay the gold content.
Again, you're going to get some pretty layman questions from me, but I was trying to, like, because I'm on here on your website and I'm looking through, you have some nice pictures of the machine. Is it, how is this being fed?
Okay, so basically the process would be, if you think about a normal mine site, you'll be generating, say, grade control sample. So a grade, that's a typical use for it in a mine site. So a grade control sample is where a geologist and a miner will go out and determine where the grade of, if we're talking gold, is sitting within the ore body. So what's actually ore and what's actually waste material. So a grade control sample is just a matrix of samples across the ore body to determine where to mine and where not to mine.
Right.
So they will take those samples and they'll be the samples that are quite coarse. You will then split them down to 1 kilo, and if you've got the image up of the machine, It's got the 52 pots, which you literally just hand feed into this machine. So you'll hand feed a kilogram of quite coarse material, 2 millimeter material into the machine, seal it all up, and rotate the rotating action for an hour, generally an hour, and you'll get a very fine material. Generally, it's about percent passing 90% plus of 75 micron, which is very fine. Now, over that hour, you get the pulverization and the leaching, and then you simply take a sample of the solution and then put it through something like an AAS machine or an ICP to get the gold content. So it's very, very quick. 52 samples can be done within an hour and a half.
Wow.
And it's very, very cost effective as well.
Is there, just to kind of complete the picture, now so if there is ore body, is this the right machine, or are there some cases where it wouldn't be the right fit for an operation?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because it is the assay essentially is giving you your total cyanide recoverable gold, and with ore bodies, there is some gold that needs to be treated beforehand. That's refractory gold. So you'll get some gold that is not what you call free milling. So you actually have to process it prior to cyanidation through a CIL, CIP circuit. And that's generally associated with sulfide materials such as pyrite, pyrrhotite, those sort of sulfides. And you'll have to break down that sulfide matrix through some process, such as bioxidation or roasting or whatever it may be, to be able to free up the gold for cyanidation. In that case, you will get lower recoveries because the cyanide will only recover the component that is easily recoverable without pre-treatment. But that said, it gives the miner a good data for them to operate their site, because basically it will tell them quite easily and quickly the breakdown of what is refractory and not refractory and what can go through their plant without prior treatment. And we have a number of customers who use it for that process, with that to get that data. The other thing too is that you can also recover the pulp from each of what we call a pulp, which is a ground up solids material from each of the pots, and you can then do a subsequent fire assay or whatever assay process to give the residual gold, and from that residual gold assay plus the PAL assay, you can determine your total golden recovery quite easily. So it's a very efficient tool. Sorry, Jared. It's a very efficient tool for determining your recoverable gold and using it for process control.
Right. I was just wondering when you were talking about this. Now, the LeachWELL system, like, because again, going back to your website, I see you kind of it's quite nice actually. You walk through, and we'll make sure to put links to this for the audience and everything. There, you kind of walk through the process, and you can download the information as well. So I imagine as business manager, part of your role is business development. We'll get into sort of your reach here in a moment. Are there people using the system without using the PAL 1000? And so is part of what you're doing is trying, because it's so much more efficient and quicker, that you're trying to get them onto using this actual machine in addition to which integrates that system?
Yeah, so there's lots of people using LeachWELL, because LeachWELL is also used in recoverable of coarse gold. It can be used in a process plant and in high intensity cyanide reactors. There's also customers in the lab just using LeachWELL for their bottle rolls. There's customers using the Assay Tabs, which is a combination of LeachWELL and cyanide, in bottle roll only. But what we're trying to encourage more and more customers to do globally is to use the PAL, because of the benefits it can bring to the customer in terms of it's a very low OPEX cost. We feel it's about 20% of comparable assay techniques. The capital cost is very low. It's south of 70,000 USD, and the turnaround of an hour to an hour and a half in samples is very, very quick compared to other methods. And it also provides a mimic or an overview of how your plant's going to actually recover the gold. So we have these other products to answer your question with the LeachWELL, the Assay Tabs, but really we feel the most benefit our customers will get is by using both of those components within the PAL system.
What is your daily role, Nathan? What are you sort of focused on a day-to-day basis, but and on sort of a larger scale, like over a year? What is sort of your focus within the company?
Day to day, basically, what I'm focused on managing the site, because we manufacture all of the equipment here, the PAL system. So we have a fabrication workshop. So we have a team that punches them out quite regularly. For example, we produced, I think it was 10 machines, which in the last the last financial year, which is quite a number for us. There's also the chemical production process, which I manage. So that involves, production planning, safety, all of those sorts of normal sort of activities, operational activities, but also business development in terms of developing new markets and getting the word out there, such as we're trying to do today in regards to our products and technologies.
I'm curious about this because we're starting. Heard me at the beginning of the show talking about doing our heavy industry tour, and I'm curious. Do you see? Is it a different approach? Like I think I saw in your. I mean, I guess the first question is, where on the globe are you sort of covering right now? And the second part of that question, is there sort of a different approach that your team has to take depending on where it is in the world, communicating where head office is as opposed to where the mine operator is, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, again, that's a good question, because obviously being based in Western Australia, there's a very healthy gold mining industry within Western Australia. I think there's 160 to 170 tonnes of gold produced just in this state. So we have a footprint here, and that's been our traditional market, but also throughout Australia. We have a very healthy customer base within Northwest Africa, because one of the other, just to touch on it, one of the other benefits of the system is it's very robust and easy to use. So it really lends itself to working on remote mine sites. So it's almost like a plug and play type technology. We ship the material, we ship it out in sea containers. It basically gets pulled out of the container, placed on the laboratory floor, plumbed in, and it's ready to go with very little training. So we've found a good niche market within some of these Northwest African mines. Also Europe, Eastern Europe, we've got a number of locations, and we're starting to get a footprint within North America. To your question of does that change where we're going? Not really, because I think regardless of where you're mining and where the mine site's located, everyone has the same issues in terms of any issues they have with mining and assaying, etc. So really, regardless where the head office is or where the mining location is, everyone shares the same issues, and we can have the same conversations with customers depending on where they are.
Are they now? Are you a larger operation? Do they just get multiple units, or is one usually efficient? Is it ever over? Is there a size where it's a little bit overkill for a certain scale, or sort of how do you gauge that, or how do the mine operators?
It's really based on their assay sample numbers. So as I said, the unit will ostensibly produce 52 results within an hour to an hour and a half. So that translates to say 400 to 500 samples per day, depending on how many per unit, depending on operating time. So the more, it's quite simple, the maths is the more samples they're doing, the more units they put in place, and it scales up. So we have some major mines which have 3 units. We have some mines that have a single unit. So it really does depend on the sample demand. One of our other, just while I'm talking about that, one of our other major customer bases is the large geochem laboratories.
I was going to ask about that, yeah.
Who basically will have a centralised location for their assay within the region, and they may have several units to service a number of different mines. So it really goes from a single unit on a remote mine site in the middle of the Pilbara region of Western Australia to, say, 3 units in a geochem lab in West Africa.
In today's world, it's so, you're coming on our show. We're obviously completely different locations, and now good old Google and all this promotion on LinkedIn and all these different ways of sort of connecting. Do you find now, are people pretty educated about what the product lines are, what you're offering, or is there still a lot of outreach? You have to go to that mine in Western Africa and say, hey, this is what we're doing, this is how it works, here's an example of where it works somewhere else. What's sort of that process? And have you seen that? I know you haven't been with the company, 10 years or anything, but just from your experience in the industry, have you seen that sort of shift over the last few years, the way you have to educate people or the way that they kind of come pre-educated to you?
It's interesting. Certainly the connectivity that social media brings, and whether it be YouTube or LinkedIn's a big one, etc., you can certainly educate your potential customers a lot easier than what it was, say, 10, 15 years ago, where it was a lot of face-to-face and a lot of travel. So it's certainly a lot easier in that way. A lot of our business is word of mouth and referral up to this point as well, because there's a lot of transitory sort of professional individuals within the mining industry who will go from one site to one site, and we tend to find once they've used our system and they go to another site, they ring up and say, hey, we'd love to have the system wherever they are. So it's a combination of word of mouth and existing use being then transferred to other sites, but also we're finding more and more that social and that form of you know, I wouldn't call it advertising, but information sharing
Yeah.
is more and more important and becomes a bigger part of the mix.
Sort of going inwards on you, and just put a stop to it if I'm asking any secret sauce type questions. But when you're as a manufacturer, has this the global market, supply chains and all that sort of stuff, has in your part of the world, in your facility, has that been a challenge? I mean, the mining demand is so high right now, and everybody's sort of flying, but you've got this sort of world challenge that's happening at the same time. I'm just kind of curious, with your sort of inward looking part of your role,
Yeah,
how's that sort of affected you, and how have you handled it?
yeah, it's definitely affected not only us but all. I'd say all businesses, definitely within the Western Australia and Australia as well. In terms of times, in terms of the timing it's taking to get our raw materials, but also the cost of getting those raw materials, freight costs.
Yeah.
For a sea container might have been 2,000 USD for a container to be shipped somewhere. Now we're talking $12,000 to $15,000, depending on where it is. Dangerous goods, which obviously we're using cyanide, so it's a class 6.1 dangerous good. Very difficult to ship around the world, so we're having challenges with that. But that just means you have to potentially order in bulk materials because you need to carry higher inventory, or even
Right.
source locally. So there's a range of measures we've had to introduce to ensure that our customers' demands are met, and it's very challenging. And what works one month may not work the next. So it's
Right.
definitely something we share with a lot of companies, certainly within Western Australia. No doubt, globally, it's still an issue.
Yeah, it's such a strange thing because I had a guest on. They were on they were building it. They are building attachments, and and it was a very interesting interview because they went from he was sort of looking at it originally as and I remember because I was in the home exterior business at that time, that it was more of the supply. Everybody whittled down what they held in storage, and then everybody kind of thought that was going to be the issue, and
Mm.
then he and then it was all of a sudden, no, 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 we need to stock up on supplies because all of a sudden everybody's trying to get the supply. So from your perspective, from mineral process control, how early did you realize, no, this is not a dwindle down
Mm.
environment, this is a stock up environment?
Um, I'd I'd probably say from the middle of last year, maybe just prior to that, we started seeing it. Where it first manifested with steel supply,
Yeah.
trying to get steel um, supply out of wherever. I think most of it comes from China and India, from Western Australia, and first of all trying to get it out of the countries because obviously China and India were having various lockdowns for various reasons.
Yeah.
But then also trying to get it into Fremantle Port, which is our local port, because we had a backlog of ships sitting there waiting to get it in. So that's really where it hit. We then had to try and source locally, and everyone was trying to source locally. So that's probably where we first started to see, and then we've started to see it with parts supply. Certain parts out of North America taking longer. Whether that's a manufacturing issue, I don't think it is. It's more a freight issue. It seems to have started with those sort of margin items mid last year for us anyway, and then it's starting to be compounded, I suppose, as it's a magnifying effect through the supply chain,
Yeah.
which I thought, in all honesty, by now it might have been rectified, but it doesn't seem to be going anywhere too soon.
Yeah, it seems to compound a lot faster than it unwinds. And part of the reason I bring that up too is because sort of another thing I wanted to ask you about was, I don't know. Team has always been important, but I think probably nowadays it's just kind of ratcheted up to another level because we are in sort of this world now where you can't anticipate as well as you could before. So I'm curious, just sort of that leadership team that's at Mineral Process Control. Sort
Mm.
of if you could touch on that and sort of how you collaborate, what that team looks like, and sort of who those main players are at the company.
Okay. Well, primarily the leadership team is composed of the managing director, Rob Mason, who I think I touched on earlier. Rob's many years' experience in the mining field within Western Australia, run his own small gold mines. He's a geologist by training. He started the company in '95. He's got an extensive knowledge of the industry, where our products fit, and he's very innovative, and he's really the driving force in terms of the product development. Um, John Cooper, who's one of our directors. John is a chemist who's extensive assay knowledge, from over 20, 30 years in the industry, working on mine site laboratories and geochem laboratories in as far-flung places as West Africa. So he brings a knowledge in regards to how the utility of the process within the laboratory. And then you have myself, I'm a metallurgist by profession. Started, in the gold mining industry and base metals, and then I've been in precious metal refining for a number of years and understand the precious metal supply chain completely. I feel what we all bring is, because of our training background, we bring a very sound, what I feel is a very sound coverage of the mining process from a geological mining supply side, from a metallurgy processing, and in the assay laboratory. So we don't just sell equipment and chemicals, we also sell technical knowledge. So
Right. Yeah.
uh, we have a lot of interaction with our customers pre-sale, but also post-sale in regards to any basic issues with the equipment, but also from the point of view of if there's any new material ore bodies coming through their process, the best way to treat it, through the PEL process and so on. So we bring a wide coverage, as I said, of knowledge in terms of the complete mining chain.
Is that a big part of the business, the servicing after and training and sort of helping people develop their system after they've got their units, your units and process in place?
Not really the training so much, because, as I said before, the system's very, very easy to use, which is
Yeah.
one of the benefits. So training is part of it, but we can do that from the beauty of video conferencing and so on. We can do that remotely, although we have attended sites before, but with restrictions of travel in the last few years, that's been difficult. So one benefit has allowed us to enhance our system so we can train on-site staff a lot better. But more so in terms of from a technical point of view, not necessarily using the equipment per se as how it all functions, but more so in terms of if there's any recovery issues from the system, if there's any changes, QA, QC, etc. We can talk through with our customers, and that's a big part of the customer relationship. Is not just selling a machine and products to the customer. It's also engaging in a conversation post installation to ensure that they're getting the best out of the technology.
Just towards as we get toward the end of the interview, I always try to ask some sort of question, and it's kind of the beauty of my job that I get to be I get to be paid to ask questions that are helpful to me personally. And I try to avoid, how do you motivate people and all the standard sort of questions. And one thing that stood out, kind of jumped out for me, is looking at your team, your leadership team, is all the experience, the three of you that
Mm.
you have. And I was curious, someone like yourself comes into a team, you have experience. I'll try to make sense of this question. You have experience, you sort of know certain ways that things needs to be done, but then you also kind of have to you have to kind of be open to new ideas and listening to other people. And when you sort of have a lot of experience under your belt, how do you sort of collaborate with two other people that have a lot of experience under their belt? And you might walk into the room knowing the answer, but maybe it's not the exact answer that they're expecting. How do you sort of manage that in your professional career?
It's an interesting question, and I think people have probably written a lot of books about this sort of stuff, so I'm no expert on it. But I suppose the one thing for me is to go in with an open mind and open ears. You said listening. I think that's a key part of it. I understand what my knowledge may be, but I also understand what the gaps in that knowledge are, and very quickly I can understand with meeting with other people in the room as to what their knowledge may be. And I think the key is to be able to um, listen and engage the other people, the other professionals, in a way that you're actually, you're collaborating and putting ideas out there and promoting an environment where you're not going to be, just flatly rejecting someone else's
Yeah.
ideas. I think conflict can be okay. Creative conflict is generally where you get good ideas out of.
Yeah.
So you need to foster that creative conflict rather than destructive conflict, which is very difficult. But as long as I think you respect the other people's opinions and they can respect yours, you can definitely come out of that sort of environment with the outcome that you desire.
Is that natural for you though? Again, going back to that sort of the years of experience, when you okay, let's say you're trying to deal with an issue or like or you have an idea. It's either you're fixing something or you have an idea of just how to improve something or whatever. And now you've got a meeting, let's say it's Monday. Are you consciously going, okay, I'm going to listen, I'm going to ask a couple questions, just sort of get this going? Or does it come natural as opposed to, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, you sort of had to plan out your approach? Or do you still do that even when you're working with a team and I'm talking about a team that works well together, where it's
Yeah.
everybody is pushing forward. Do you still sort of go through the list of how to approach it?
If I'm completely honest, no, it's not a natural thing for me to do, and it's something I've had to work on
Yeah.
because most people in those sort of environments have very good knowledge and strong opinions and understand and probably feel that they understand the answer, like you said, and the way to do it. And I'm no different. So it is very much a process of
Mm.
checking yourself. If you hear yourself doing, asking questions and doing things that may be generating a not the environment, the teamwork you require, then you need to check yourself. So that requires a hell of a lot of self reflection and self awareness, which is something that I definitely work on day to day, and I'm pretty sure most people do.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have a physical thing, so I can tell when I'm pushing too hard in a meeting. I actually get this like dryness, like I know exactly where it is in my throat, and I'm like, okay, I'm doing it again. Let's just take a pause, talk a little slower. Don't stop moving your hands so much. And the reason I ask that though is because like. And I always sort of I don't plan these questions out generally. I kind of wait till the end of the interview because I'm hearing you talk and it's quite clear and you're following through with the conversation. And so I always think, someone like yourself, someone could hear it, someone who's maybe new to the industry and they just go, how do I ever get there? Where I can just so comfortably talk through stuff. And it's always nice to sort of let people know how much work goes into getting to that point where you can communicate, but you can also listen, but not listen to the point where the people that you're listening to lose what you're bringing to the table. It is a lot of conscious effort that has to go into that development,
Mm-hmm.
especially in a leadership role.
Yep, and a lot of mistakes made.
Mm-hmm.
And 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 I won't pretend to feel that it's been an even, upward curve. It's not a hockey curve in development. It's a bumpy road with more setbacks than progress. So, but as long as you're honest with yourself and you want to
Mm-hmm.
achieve what you need to achieve, and you understand that you're going to make mistakes and don't beat yourself up over it. I think, and you learn from them. I think that generally you're on the right path.
Yeah, well, I think I think anybody who's done anything that's worth doing has made their share of mistakes. I get just to wrap up the interview. So for mineral process control, um, you kind of touched on it, but I'll just kind of circle back to it. Is where are the main target markets? Are you pretty happy with your market penetration in these areas, or like in North America, are you hoping to push a lot harder into the Canada and US and these places?
Yeah, I think if we're honest, that's a key market for us to push in. We need to maintain and nurture our existing
Yeah.
markets, um, but we feel our brand's known, and the general industry within those markets have an awareness and understanding of the efficacy of our products. Um, Not so much in North or the Americas. I'd say the Americas in general. We have probably half a dozen installations within those markets. We're starting to pick up.
Hmm.
I feel there's probably a reasonable amount of brand awareness that needs to take place in those markets before we can really push. So we see it as a fertile ground, but there's obviously some challenges like anywhere else.
Yeah. Well, I hope obviously our we've got audience all over the world, but our main audience is U.S. and Canada. So I certainly hope we can play some role in that. And Nathan, I just want to thank you for coming on the interview. It's a very interesting company and a very interesting product line. So I hope we get to do it again. I think we are going to be at IMARC, and maybe we get to do a part two with some approach it from a few different angles there. But it was great to have you on the show.
No, it's my pleasure, and thanks for having me.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for listening. Again, we are going to provide a lot of links in this interview because their website is very nicely. It sort of lays everything out, and it's quite good for if you're just trying to understand the product and understand the processes. So we'll have plenty of links to that. Please keep watching, subscribe, make sure to enter the contest. Let us know if you want to do an interview from any of these events that we're going to be at. We'll post a link to that as well. Thank you everybody for watching. We will see you on the next episode of Mining Now.